So, you just walked out of the AIBE II exam and maybe you're feeling a little overwhelmed, maybe even defeated. Look, you are not alone. And this explainer is for you. We're going to dive deep into why this paper wasn't just tough, it was fundamentally different, and we're going to break down exactly what that means.
Okay, first things first, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. If you feel like you didn't do well, even after all that preparation, take a deep breath. This time, it really probably wasn't your fault. The problems with this paper were systemic. They were baked into its design, and they had very little to do with how hard you worked.
So, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to unpack exactly why this exam felt so off. Then, I'm going to walk you through a seriously powerful method for tackling even the most confusing questions. And finally, and this is the important part, we'll talk about how you can actually challenge the paper's biggest flaws. All right, let's get into it. Let's start by just validating what so many of you felt walking out of that hall. What were the specific issues that made this particular exam so uniquely challenging?
You know, the difficulty here wasn't just about hard questions. It was a perfect storm of problems. The whole pattern was changed, which threw everybody for a loop right from the start. You had questions that were totally irrelevant, topics that were completely out of syllabus, and these confusing formats like assertion reason just popping up all over the place. It felt like this combination wasn't just testing your knowledge, it was designed to destroy your confidence mid-exam.
Okay, so that was the problem. How do you fight back against a paper that's designed like that? Well, you fight back with a strategy. Let's get into a simple, repeatable method you can use for this kind of open book exam, even if you have absolutely no idea what the question is talking about.
And this is the big question, right? This is the central problem. You've got all the bare acts right there with you, but the question doesn't give you a section number. It feels like you're searching for a needle in a haystack. So how do you find that needle without wasting all your time?
Well, the solution is something I call the bare act method, and it's a super simple 4-step process. Step 1, just identify the act mentioned in the question, like the Indian Penal Code. Step 2, and this is key, don't start flipping through the whole book. Go straight to the contents page, the index, and scan for keywords from the question, like harboring offender. Step 3, that contents page will point you to the exact section number, in this case, section 216. And finally, step 4, you just turn to that section and match what it says with the options you have. That's it.
And the magic here is that this isn't just random searching. It's a systematic, targeted approach. A task that feels impossible, like searching hundreds of pages under insane time pressure, suddenly becomes a focused 3-minute job. Seriously, it's a total game changer.
Okay, now for the part where you get to take some power back. Let's talk about how you can, and should, challenge the flawed questions in this paper, and, in doing so, potentially give your final score a real boost. There are basically 4 types of flawed questions you can object to. First, questions on omitted sections, like one about Section 140 of the Motor Vehicle Act, a section that doesn't even exist anymore. Then you had stuff that was completely out of syllabus, from acts like the Payment of Gratuity Act. They even asked about old repealed laws like the 1894 Land Acquisition Act. And finally, you had simple, frustrating printing errors, like a question citing a non-existent Section 14A of the CPC, sending students on a wild goose chase for nothing.
And then there's this, 2. That's how many times the exact same concept from Section 58 of the CPC showed up back-to-back in questions 21 and 22. I mean, come on. With a syllabus that massive, testing the same tiny point twice, that's not just lazy exam design, it's straight up unfair.
So, why does raising objections matter so much? Well, it's not just about being right. If these flawed questions get removed from the final count, the total marks needed to pass might go down. For some of you, that could be the difference that pushes your score over the passing line. It can literally change your result.
All right, last section. Let's decode the most confusing question formats we saw in this paper.
because knowing how to approach them differently is a massive strategic advantage.
Okay, so you have assertion, reason, and statement conclusion questions. They look similar, but they are worlds apart. Assertion, reason questions are tough. They test the why behind the law. You have to use your bare act to check two different statements and see if one is the correct explanation for the other. But statement conclusion questions? They're basically just reading comprehension. The law is handed to you right there in the statement.
And this is the most important thing to remember. For those statement conclusion questions, all the information you need is right there in the question itself. You don't need any prior knowledge. Your only job is to read carefully and see if the conclusions make logical sense based on the text that gave you. It's a test of logic, not a test of memory. So, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. Number 1, the AIBE 20 was so hard because it was poorly designed, not because you didn't prepare. Number 2, the bare act method is your secret weapon for finding answers systematically. 3, you can and absolutely should raise objections to flawed questions. And finally, number 4, knowing the difference between assertion, reason, and statement conclusion questions is a strategic superpower.
The AIBE 20 was, without a doubt, a huge challenge. But it leaves us with a really important question to think about. What does a paper like this tell us about where legal exams are headed? And, more importantly, how do we need to adapt our preparation for a future where exams test not just what we know, but how we think and strategize under incredible pressure?